Today is the 16th of April 2021, and it is the day before the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip's funeral. So I wanted to come at you with a video bringing you all of the official details that we actually know. So what I'm going to be talking about is not speculation, it's not something that people have made up. This is going to be official information. Plus, there is a few other things that have been going on over the past couple of days that I want to talk about. And also, as it's a live chat, I will be taking as many viewer comments and questions as I possibly can. So if you have a really good question, do type it, and if I've got time, I will obviously go back and read it and try to answer it if I haven't covered it already in this video. So we have people dropping in already, so I'm going to go straight to it. So I'm actually reading from the official Buckingham Palace website. So this is official, actual information about what is going to happen on the day. I think it's always best to start with the actual information. So the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral. I will also stop and comment as well. The Duke of Edinburgh's funeral will be a ceremonial royal funeral. So this is not a full state funeral. It's more of a kind of military-based funeral than what a big full state funeral was. If you think back to Diana's funeral, that was not a full state funeral. Some people might think it was. That was kind of like it was halfway between a private and a state funeral. In fact, Diana's funeral was very loosely based upon the Queen Mother's own funeral plans. So the same as that, it says here, of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. It will not be a state funeral, something that is generally reserved for monarchs, or indeed consorts, or even prominent prime ministers or leaders of the time. So no, Philip did not want a fussy state funeral. He wanted something a bit more military, personal, family based. The Dean of Windsor will conduct the funeral service, and the Archbishop of Canterbury will pronounce the blessing. So there's two kind of officials presiding over the whole funeral service. Now, as we know, global pandemic. So due to the current public health guidelines here in the UK, there are still restrictions on funerals. Some elements of the funeral plan have been modified, although the day will still be very much in line with His Royal Highness's wishes. So in the UK, you're only actually allowed 30 guests to attend the service. They have to be socially distanced, so you can't hug. You can sit next to people in your own bubble. So if you've got a family bubble, so for example, William and Catherine can sit together. But because the Queen is very much in her own bubble at Windsor, none of the family members are actually in her bubble. So she will be sitting alone. They have to wear masks during the service. I don't think they'll be taking them off. I'll be surprised if they do. But the Queen will be at the front, and she will be by herself. She won't have anyone sat next to her. So I'm going to carry on reading, and then we'll get to that. It might actually be quite prominent and quite pertinent, quite powerful, actually quite a powerful image that the Queen is now actually on her own. She won't be on her own in reality going forwards. Family will be around her, supporting her. But certainly it will send the message that the Queen is now ruling very, very much alone without her consort of all those years. So due to the current public health guidelines, some elements of the plan have been modified. The funeral will be broadcast live on TV and radio to allow people around the world to take part in mourning the Duke. Now, if you go to the Royal Family Twitter account, and you scroll down a little tiny bit, there is a link. I think it is actually being shown on YouTube. So do go click that link if you think that your TV stations are not covering it. There is a link on the Royal Family Twitter account. Go check it out, and hopefully you will be able to see. So the running order. So for Saturday, the 17th of April, it actually begins at 2:40 p.m. That's the TV. Although there is kind of something happening at 11 a.m., which I'll get to in a moment. So the coffin will emerge from the state entrance of Windsor Castle into the quadrangle. If you can think back to last year's stripped back Trooping the Colour, that is the quadrangle. That is where that took part. So That's where we're thinking of. Followed by the members of the royal family who will be walking in the procession. We'll talk more about the procession in a moment. All those in the quadrangle will give the coffin a royal salute before the coffin is placed onto the Land Rover. Now, as we know, this Land Rover, this green modified Land Rover, was the wishes of Prince Philip. He's been working on this vehicle, modified to his own special requirements, for a great number of years. In fact, the last work done to it was in 2019. So he has basically designed his own funeral vehicle. He didn't want a hearse, he didn't want a gun carriage like Diana had or the Queen Mother. He wanted something a bit more less fussy. So he chose a Land Rover, his favourite vehicle, which I think is very fitting for him. And of course, the Queen has approved all of these plans. The Queen will depart at that point from the Sovereign's entrance in her state Bentley, a much more comfortable ride. The procession will move towards St George's Chapel through the Engine Court and Chapel Hill Parade Ground into the Horseshoe Cloister, arriving at the West Steps. The procession route will be lined by representatives from the Royal Navy, the Royal Marines, the Highlanders and 4th Battalion Royal Regiment of Scotland and the Royal Air Force. Of course, a nod to Prince Philip's involvement with the military and his many kind of military appointments, whether they be ones that he earned himself or honorary ones that he's held for a great number of years. Minute gun salutes will be fired by the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery from the East Lawn of Windsor Castle for the duration of the procession only. The curfew tower bell will also toll, all very kind of, prominent, pertinent marks of affection, but also respect as well. The members of the royal family who will follow on foot behind the coffin are, and this has been much talked about in recent days, the Princess Royal. By the way, it's in pairs, apart from a grouping of 3. So the first pair in the line behind the coffin is, of course, the Duke's eldest children, the Prince of Wales and the Princess Royal, Princess Anne. Next behind is the Earl of Wessex and the Duke of York. Now, of course, Andrew is still going through all of his issues that he's going through regarding Jeffrey Epstein and his associations with him. However, this is a family occasion. This is a family funeral. So he is not being written out of his own father's funeral. He will be there and he will be taking place next to his brother Edward, behind the Princess Royal and, of course, Prince Charles. Next is, of course, Prince Harry, who has returned from the US and has been in self-isolation at Frogmore Cottage. In the middle, and this is the bit that's been causing a little bit of a stir, is Peter Phillips. Now, Mr. Peter Phillips is, of course, Princess Anne's eldest child and also the Queen and the Duke's eldest grandchild. So some people mistakenly think that Prince William is the eldest grandchild. That is not actually the case. By the way, I am aware that my face has gone incredibly white. It's because the window is quite bright in front of me and it's quite sunny, so do forgive. But yes, the Duke of Cambridge, Prince William, is not the eldest grandchild. It's actually Mr. Peter Phillips. So he's in the middle. Now, of course, they're arriving in pairs. So Zara is not in the main procession. I imagine, well, she is. She's arriving with her husband, Mike Tyndall. Again, there's been a lot of speculation as to why, for example, Peter is in the middle. People have been speculating as to whether or not it is to keep the Duke of Sussex and the Duke of Cambridge kind of apart. Typically, they would be walking to these kind of occasions shoulder to shoulder, side by side as brothers. This is not going to be the case, and we can speculate as much as we like as to the whys and what fors of this arrangement, but signed off by the Queen, we have the Duke of Sussex, Peter Phillips, and then Prince William, the Duke of Cambridge, in a grouping of 3. Following them is Vice Admiral Sir Timothy Lawrence, Princess Anne's husband, and the Earl of Snowdon. Now, the Earl of Snowdon is Princess Margaret's son. All very, very close, of course, to Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, and also the Earl of Snowdon's sister, Lady Sarah Chateau, is also going to be at the funeral as well. Bearing in mind it is limited to 30, so not every royal got to go. We'll talk about that as well. The national anthem will then play as the coffin arrives at Horseshoe Cloister, to be met by representatives from the Commonwealth and a dismounted detachment of the Household Cavalry. By the way, all rehearsals have been going ahead. You may have seen photographs or video clips. It looks like it's going to be an amazing funeral, to be quite honest. The bearer party will then carry the coffin up the west steps of the chapel before pausing for the national minute silence as a mark of respect, which should, if timed correctly, I'm sure it will. Timing is usually impeccable. That will take place at 3 p.m. The Dean of Windsor and the Archbishop of Canterbury will then receive the coffin. As the doors to St George's Chapel close, the Royal Navy piping party will pipe the carry-on. Now, I do like some good Scottish bagpipe music. It is quite rousing. So I think that will be... obviously, the music is chosen by Prince Philip. You know, he spent, I think, the last 19 years really fine-tuning his funeral, only to have it literally kind of stripped back at the last minute because of, obviously, COVID. So let's go through the actual guest list. So these are confirmed people attending. Obviously, we have the Queen and the party that I have just spoken about, who will be following in the procession. So outside of that, we have the Duchess of Cornwall, of course, the Countess of Wessex, Viscount Severn, James Viscount Severn, her son, and her daughter, Lady Louise Mountbatten Windsor. The Duchess of Cambridge, obviously Louis, Charlotte and Prince George are not going to be in attendance. Space is limited and they are quite young anyway. Next, Mr. and Mrs. Mike Tyndall, so Zara and Mike. Then Princess Beatrice and Mr. Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi. Princess Eugenie with husband Jack Brooksbank. And then Lady Sarah Chateau and her husband Daniel Chateau, Princess Margaret's daughter and her husband. Then the Duke of Gloucester, the Duke of Kent, and Princess Alexandra. Now, the spouses of the Queen's ducal cousins are not in attendance. This is not a slight on them. They will not be offended. They know that space is limited and it needs to be preserved for those members of family that are more prominent. So the Duke of Gloucester and the Duke of Kent are representing the Gloucester and Kent side of the family. Princess Alexandra as well. The hereditary Prince of Baden. Now, so there are 3 members of Philip's kind of German extended family, so representing that side of his family. The hereditary Prince of Baden, the Landgrave of Hesse, the Prince of Hohenlohe-Langenburg. So those are the 3 representing his German side. Then, of course, the Countess Mountbatten of Burma, who was an incredibly close friend of Philip. She could not be left out. So like I say, the guest list was limited to 30. I'm sure, you know, in normal times, they would have loved to have had even more family members there and representatives from different countries and Commonwealth. That was just not possible in these times that are going on now. So I think looking at the guest list, I actually think it's a really good one. It's a really fair one. It represents quite a lot in terms of Philip's family, and also, you know, a nod to his German side as well. The congregation will wear face masks for the service, and members of the royal family will wear day dress or morning coat with medals. Uniforms. So this has been another contentious issue that has been in the media. Normally, for this sort of occasion, for this sort of funeral, members of the family, typically men, although Princess Anne does have honorary military appointments too, will wear the military uniform of which rank they hold. So if you think back to, for example, the Queen Mother's funeral, we actually saw members of the royal family, the Queen Mother's grandchildren, walking in procession behind the coffin in full military uniform. The only one that wasn't was Prince Edward, who at the time had not been given an honorary military appointment. So he was in mourning dress. So if you think back to the Queen's mother's funeral, Edward was the only one of his siblings who was kind of left out, not wearing a military uniform. He did not worry about that. He didn't mind. He didn't care. He didn't moan. He didn't grumble. He didn't protest. So he just kind of got on with it, and nobody thought anything of it. Fast forward to today, where we have two members of the royal family who may have requested to wear military uniform when it may have been a little bit contentious for different reasons. So of course I'm talking about Prince Andrew, I'm talking about Prince Harry. So Prince Andrew, reportedly, I don't know how true this is, so I'm going to say reportedly, asked to attend the funeral in an admiral's uniform. Now Prince Andrew was going to be appointed to the rank of admiral shortly before he had to step back as being a full-time working royal. Now, of course, Andrew still holds all of his military appointments, but he didn't get the admiral. He does, however, have the rank of vice admiral. So he could, by rights, attend the funeral in the uniform of a vice admiral. So that's not the kind of contentious issue. So whether he asked to attend as an admiral or not is kind of irrelevant. He does have the right to attend as a vice admiral. Prince Harry, however, of course, he served active service. Now, he was the captain of the Royal Marines, which of course he had to forfeit that position when he confirmed to the Queen that he was going to step back officially. So Harry knew when he confirmed to the Queen that he was going to step back from royal duties, or continue to remain stepped back from royal duties and follow his own path, which is perfectly his right to do so. He knew at that point there was going to be a time when he would be with his family, who would be in uniform, and he would not be entitled to do so. As a serving member, as a previous, an ex-serviceman, he is entitled to wear mourning dress and medals, like any other ex-serviceman or woman who has left the military. So we don't know what's happened, so I'm not going to speculate. But what we do know is, in a typical situation where military uniform would have been worn, it has now not been. The Queen has confirmed that all senior members of the royal family will wear a morning dress, just a normal morning dress. The women will wear day dress, and the men, and of course Princess Anne, can wear their medals. So nobody is in full military uniform. We don't know entirely whether or not it was more to do with Andrew or Harry or both of them, whether or not the Queen just made the decision that she didn't want the hassle of having a fallout over uniforms at a time like this. We don't know. But the one thing I do know is that this issue is not going to go away. Further down the line, whenever there is a Troop in the Colour or even the Queen's funeral herself, there will be an occasion where Prince Harry will be with the rest of the royal family and Prince Andrew, where the other members will be wearing full military uniform, and there may be one or two members that will not be. So I'm just trying to say this decision is kind of like kicking the can down the lane, because this issue is not going to go away. Even if Prince Harry never attends another Troop in the Colour ever again, he will be back to the UK when it's time for the Queen's own funeral. So what are they going to do then? Are they going to have nobody in military uniform at the Queen's funeral? I don't know. Let's just park that there and carry on. So, during the service, a small choir of 4 will sing pieces of music chosen by the Duke of Edinburgh. The choir will be located in the nave, away from the seated congregation, and in line with public health guidelines, there will be no congregational singing. That is to do with particles being projected into the air, so they really are trying to stay COVID safe. It's a little bit of a loss not having the singing, but we all, I think, completely understand why. The funeral service will be conducted by the Dean of Windsor and is expected to last for approximately 50 minutes, which is kind of a standard time for a funeral. At the conclusion of the service, the Duke of Edinburgh's coffin will be lowered into the royal vault. So under the floor of St George's Chapel, there are many, many vaults to the left, right, centre. The main royal vault. So I spoke about this before. It's kind of intended that the Queen will finally go to rest herself. Her coffin will be placed in the George VI vault, which is where her father, her mother, and her sister's ashes are interred. So what is going to happen is that when Prince Philip is in the main royal vault, when Queen Elizabeth, when it's time for her coffin to be put in the George VI vault, Philip will be removed from the royal vault and will be interred with Queen Elizabeth II together into the George VI vault. So at the moment, he will remain in the royal vault, but eventually his place will be by the Queen's side in the George VI vault. So the Archbishop of Canterbury will pronounce the blessing and the national anthem will be sung by the choir. Her Majesty the Queen, members of the royal family and the Duke of Edinburgh's family will then depart the chapel via the Galilee porch. So that is the official details of the funeral. I've got a few more things to read, so I will come back. I can see lots of people talking in the questions. And I can see some quite good comments coming on. Deborah says, so sad for the Queen. Losing your closest friend and lover after any time is unbearable, much less after 70 years. True. But the one thing I would say is, unlike Queen Victoria, who lost Prince Albert very early on in life, and unlike her own dear mother, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, who lost George VI, when she was in her 50s. Really, Queen Elizabeth and Philip have been so lucky to have had each other for such a length of time. So really, I think the Queen will probably just be feeling really, really lucky. Dan says, do you reckon when the Queen passes, will she have a regal state funeral like one of Queen Victoria's? It will be a full state funeral. It will be literally a full state funeral. I can't say any more than that. It will be the fullest state funeral ever. Thank you to Andrew Mundell, who's donated £3. Thank you so much for your support. It really does mean the world to me. Andrew also says it's a big loss with no singing, and I hope they don't forget the national anthem. Yes, the national anthem will most definitely be there. Okay, I want to kind of go through again. I've got something open. I'm just going to kind of go through again a little bit of what's going to happen on the day. So I spoke about something happening at 11 a.m. So Philip's coffin at 11 a.m. will be moved from the private chapel to the inner hall of Windsor Castle by members of the Queen's Company, 1st Battalion, the Grenadier Guards. Now, Philip's body has not left Windsor Castle, so he will have been embalmed in Windsor Castle. They will have brought things in and he will have been embalmed within the confines of Windsor Castle. As I said, at 2:15, representatives from the armed forces will be in the quadrangle and will show Philip's military relationships. 2:20 p.m, members of the royal family and Philip's relatives who are not taking part in the procession will travel by car towards St George's Chapel, and of course they will be in their own little individual bubbles. At 2:27, the Land Rover, which will bear Philip's body, arrives at the George IV gate and proceeds clockwise around the quadrangle to the Equerries entrance. At 2:38 p.m, pallbearers carry the coffin through the inner hall to the state entrance, where it is loaded back onto the Land Rover. At 2:40, members of Philip's household take up their positions in the procession and the bands stop playing music. 2:41, the coffin emerges from the state entrance and is met by members of the royal family who are walking in the procession. 2:44 p.m, the Queen, attended by a lady in waiting. So the Queen will have a lady in waiting as she leaves the state entrance and joins the procession in the state Bentley. But that lady in waiting will then fall away, and the Queen will obviously take her place by herself. Number 9, at 2:45 p.m, the procession proceeds towards St George's Chapel as minute gun salutes are fired from the east lawn. At 2:53, the Land Rover arrives to the steps of St George's Chapel, where the Royal Marines will lift the coffin and carry it inside. At 3 p.m, a minute's silence takes place as the funeral begins. And as I've just said, the funeral will pretty much last for about 50 minutes. Now, Prince Philip has chosen all of the regalia and medals that he wants displayed at his funeral. So some of his medals, which he has chosen to include the Queen's Service Order of New Zealand, the Atlantic Star, the 1939-45 Star, the Africa Star, the Italy Star, the King George VI Coronation Medal, Queen Elizabeth II Coronation Medal, Queen Elizabeth II Silver Jubilee Medal, and of course the Golden Jubilee, the Canadian Forces Decoration, the Malta George Cross 50th Anniversary Medal, the Greek War Cross, the New Zealand Commemoration Medal, the Royal Navy Long Service and Good Conduct Medal, the Queen Elizabeth Diamond Jubilee Medal, and the Croix de Guerre Palm. I'm trying to read it, and it's covered by a little thing. But yes, there is so many medals and regalia that will be on show, which Philip has chosen himself. I just want to show you a picture, if you haven't seen, of the actual Land Rover that Philip his coffin will be borne upon. He even had it repainted in that specific colour. As I said, the military have been practicing already for the funeral arrangements. And I don't really think there's anything else to tell about the funeral arrangements as of yet. So I'm going to go straight over to the comments. Orbs TV says, I thought it was changed, no uniforms. Yes, no uniforms for members of the royal family in the procession. There will still be uniforms, for example, the band or people of the military who are paying their tribute. So there will be uniforms, ceremonial uniforms for them, but in terms of the royal family members following the procession, they will be in morning dress and medals, or day dress if you are a female. Corinne Hobson says, I hope in the future a memorial will be erected that includes both of them, put in a very prominent position. Yes, I mean, there's already talk in Parliament of perhaps a statue in Philip's honour to be placed somewhere prominent, maybe on the Mall, which is the big long pink driveway, if you like, up to Buckingham Palace. Yes, my French is terrible. I couldn't pronounce it. Mary says, which brooch do you think the Queen will wear? Now, in previous funerals, the Queen has worn many bow brooches, some of Queen Victoria's bow brooches. At her mother's, I think she wore the lily brooch. Personally, I think she might wear pieces of jewellery that perhaps Philip has given her or designed. One brooch which he did actually design and gift her was the Grima Ruby. I'll just do a quick search just to see if I can find a picture of it while we're live. But the Grima Ruby brooch, let's just have a look. So I do believe this was designed by Philip, or it was given to her by Philip. Yes. Yeah, so the Duke of Edinburgh purchased this for the Queen, and she has worn it at kind of many kind of prominent positions. So if I just kind of show you, that is the Grima Ruby. So I'm wondering, I personally think she might wear the Grima Ruby, but we'll see. It could be a bow brooch, it could be something a lot bigger, who knows. Betsy Herman says, I'm still crying over this loss. Yes, it is a terrible, terrible loss. I also want to mention Princess Eugenie's tribute, which she posted on social media. So she shared a photograph and she said, we all miss you. Dearest Grandpa, we all miss you. You would be so touched by all the tributes that have been shared with me the past few days. People remember sitting next to you at a dinner or shaking your hand once, who remember you saying hello in passing, or remember how much their Duke of Edinburgh award meant to them. I remember learning how to cook, how to paint, what to read. I remember laughing at your jokes and asking about your spectacular life and service in the Navy. I remember incinerating the sausages and you swooping in to save the day. I remember your hands and your laugh and your favourite beer. I will remember you in your children, your grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Thank you for your dedication and love for us all, and especially Granny, who we will look after for you. With all my love, Princess Eugenie. Now, I still think Eugenie and Beatrice should have prominent positions within the royal family. I think they would make amazing companions for the Queen. It has been kind of said that the Queen will not be left alone when it comes to doing in-person duties. She will pretty much have a member of the working royals by her side to accompany her. And I'm really hoping that Beatrice and Eugenie will be allowed to step up and accompany the Queen on some of these in-person engagements. I think that would be really special, and they would do an amazing job. Oh, by the way, welcome to Oban Scotts, who has joined the YouTube version of the club, I guess. So yes, also Princess Anne has actually returned to just one or two duties during this week. The royals are on official mourning for 2 weeks. However, it was stated that some commitments would have still gone ahead, and Princess Anne chose to take part in cows, which is all to do with sailing. And of course, Prince Philip was an avid sailor, and Princess Anne shared a passion and a love of sailing with her father. So she took part in that. She wore, obviously, mourning colours, but it was good to see her out and about. I probably think that a period of mourning probably isn't really Princess Anne's style. She likes to, as Philip would say, just bloody get on with it. So Princess Anne, very much in the same vein, probably sees little point in kind of moping about. She probably wants to just get out there and get on with things in true Prince Philip style and fashion. Also, the Queen has returned. Well, she's actually took part in 2 duties, remarkably 4 days after the passing of Philip. And this was, of course, to kind of see out and see in a prominent member of staff in the household. So it wasn't a kind of a big, it wasn't an in-person engagement in terms of going to visit somewhere, but it was an official kind of duty that needed to be performed. It could have been postponed until after the funeral. However, the Queen kind of probably thought, well, let's just go ahead and get it done anyway. So the Queen always, the Countess of Wessex said that the Queen is putting others before herself, as she always has done. And, the Queen, no exception here, she wanted to do the right thing and put duty before self. So she won't be doing, that many in-person engagements. But, the mechanisms of state still need to go ahead. Most things will have been postponed, if they can be postponed, until after this official 2-week period of mourning. Yes, the Lord Chamberlain. So yes, that's the official. I didn't want to go into too much detail, but it's an official kind of changing over of staff. The Earl Peel is kind of leaving, and then she gets a new one. Serenity B says, I think it's her way of coping. Yeah, and the Queen will be very stoic, even on the day of the funeral. H. London says the Range Rover vehicle that will carry Philip's casket is so him. It will be a lasting memory of who he really was. Yes, no fuss. Mrs. Weather says, I am glad that the funeral was also designed to cut down speculation and bullying by the press. Obviously the main reason it was cut down is because of COVID. It was always not going to be a full state funeral, but more in line with a military funeral. However, COVID has probably, in a way, given Philip what he wanted, which would have been a lot less fuss. But in terms of what's going on. Let me just deal with a troll for a moment in the live chat. There we go. So basically, in terms of all the uniforms and all this business that's going on, all this kind of speculation, the one thing, that's all speculation, but the one thing that we can say is that the funeral that is going ahead has had the Queen's blessing. So regardless of what I think or you think or the press are saying or anyone else, what has been approved to go ahead, what we will see tomorrow take place, the Queen has agreed with. And if the Queen has signed all that off, then people shouldn't really be moaning, because if the Queen is happy on this sort of an occasion, we should all be happy about it. Right, I'm just dealing with a few trolls. There we go. Lauren says, yes, it's very sad that the Queen will have to sit by herself, but unless the government changes the rules, yeah, and they aren't going to change the rules, because then people will think they're changing it just for the royal family, and the royal family will be seen to be doing exactly the same as what other people have had to go through, what regular people, civilians, have had to go through during this time when they have sadly lost somebody due to COVID or any other illnesses. These are the rules and stipulations that they will have had to have abided by, and the royal family are going to be doing exactly the same thing. Do I think there will be a memorial service later? It's hard to tell. There could be something. When things go back to normal, there could be something like maybe a celebration concert, or there could be something going on. And I think it's highly likely there will be a statue at some point. And yes, they will be sitting socially distanced unless they're in their bubble. So, for example, William and Catherine can sit together because they are part of the same bubble. Right. We have a few more trolls. Okay. Lisa Taylor says, this whole thing with Harry and his brother is overshadowing this whole funeral. It would be very respectful if everyone remembers that this man served his country. Well, I think you're talking about Philip served his country. Philip did serve his country. And, you know, everyone at that funeral should be paying their respects to him. Everybody watching should be thinking about Philip, not necessarily what William and Harry or Andrew are doing. Although, you know, I do think there will be people watching tomorrow to see the interactions between mostly William and Harry. So we will see what kind of happens on the day. I do think for the day that, you know, it is a solemn occasion, so I don't think we'll be seeing any sort of talking anyway, because people don't normally, you know, talk to each other during a service, for example. But just thinking about how Harry has had to self-quarantine. So he will not have actually physically met up with any members of the royal family, or rather he shouldn't have done if he was keeping in with the COVID guidelines. So the day of the funeral should be the first time that Harry has met or been in close proximity with members of his family since that Commonwealth Day service a couple of years ago when he left the UK for the USA. Well, actually, no, he went, yes, for the USA. So it is quite a momentous time. Would Harry have been back now if it hadn't been for Philip's funeral? No, because of all the travel restrictions. And like I say, there is lots of speculations as to why Peter Phillips is in the middle, why they're not walking side by side. But like I say, they won't have spoken physically. Whether they've spoken on the phone since Harry's arrived, I do not know. But we shall see. I mean, you know, I'm sure there'll be a million body language experts that will be looking at whatever they can glean from it. Right, I'm going to go now. We have 447 people watching, so if you have enjoyed this video, please give it a big old thumbs up. Don't forget to share on social media, and also, of course, do hit the bell so that you know whenever I upload a new video. Talking about tomorrow, so I've decided, I think, what I'm going to do about tomorrow before I go, very quickly. I think I'm going to have a day of respect, a day of mourning as well. So I don't think I'm going to be posting, I don't plan to post any videos tomorrow. I am going to be watching the funeral with everyone else. And then I think I am going to go to the beach. I actually think I am going to go to the beach, and I'm going to have, a nice period of contemplation by myself. And I urge people, to do the same. If you're feeling sad, if you're able to go out and, have a little bit of self-care, have a little bit of reflection. But the following day, on the Sunday, I will do a live chat where I will be talking about the funeral, talking about what people are going to be saying about the funeral. I'm certainly not going to be live streaming myself watching the funeral. I think, as a mark of respect, I don't want to put out any videos tomorrow. I think it's important to have a period of reflection. So if you're wondering where I am tomorrow, that's where I am. I will have been watching the funeral, and then I think Matt and myself and some friends are going to go to the beach. And I think the beach is a lovely calming place with the waves and the sand, hopefully some nice weather, and to just have a little nice period of contemplation. So I would urge people to do something similar if you're able. So from now, from myself until Sunday, stay safe and stay well. So, mwah to you all, and goodbye.